Hello and welcome everyone to the second podcast for day 40 on ecosystems. In this podcast, we'll talk about how we look at energy within an ecosystem and how energy is used within that ecosystem. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with Objective 2. And as we begin Objective 2, let's remember that we have our sun here, 93 million miles away, shooting down its photons to our lovely planet Earth. And on this Earth we have all of the interactions we talked about on the last slide. We have our primary producers. Then we have our primary consumers. Then we have our secondary consumers. And then we have our tertiary consumers, and we have our quaternary consumers. I just don't have room to write it up here. All of this is dependent upon these primary producers. The amount of energy that is provided for this entire ecosystem is due to the amount of energy from these photons. This light energy coming into these primary producers. Our photosynthetic organisms, the plants, the cyanobacteria, the protists, with some of the protists, like the green algae. We can think of the amount of chemical energy that is converted from this solar energy, from this light energy, as the ecosystem's primary production. I'm going to write primary production. So let me define this again. This is the amount of energy from light, the sun, that is converted into chemical energy. In a specific period of time. That's our primary production. And also remember, when I say chemical energy, really what I'm talking about that is the sugars that are produced, the glucose that is produced during photosynthesis. Next, I want to break up primary production into gross and net primary production. So gross primary production. So let's define gross primary production. And we can think of it in a couple ways. It's the total primary production in an ecosystem. It's the energy, the total energy, converted from light energy to chemical energy. Okay, so we have a lot of energy coming from the sun down into these ecosystems. This energy can be converted into chemical energy, and that chemical energy makes these sugars that can be then consumed up the trophic levels. However, not all of that is available to these different trophic layers, because it costs these autotrophs some of that energy to survive and to use in their own respiration. And so it's not all available. So we need to introduce this other term called net primary production. So net primary production. It's just like your paycheck. You're given $100 in pay, but $20 has to go out to go to taxes, so you only make $80. Same thing here. We have all this energy coming in, but some of that energy has to be used to keep the autotrophs going in their own respiratory needs. So we can think of the net primary production as being equal to the gross primary production, the total amount they're getting, minus the respiratory needs. We're not going to have you perform any calculations using these. You just need to know that gross primary production is what comes into the system. Net primary production is what's available to the upper trophic levels. That's what you need to know about these two concepts here. Let's go ahead and cover the last 2 points from this objective for this podcast. They focus on net primary production, global net primary production, the amount of production that occurs globally. And it's nice to look at an image as we see here. In this image, what we can see is the relative amount of production that occurs in different areas of the world. Purple is the lowest, so our oceans have the lowest net primary production. However, you look at areas like the Amazon here, some of these regions, tropical regions, we see highest levels of net primary production in the yellow, orange, and red areas shown here. And moving up here through Central America and in the Caribbean, we see more here, around where we would find like a rainforest. These have the highest net primary production. And then you see relatively less in other areas of the world. And if you look at the oceans jump right out at you as having a very low level of net primary production. However, globally speaking, they produce just as much net primary production as we see in terrestrial spaces, if you add it all up. And really the reason for this is simply that the ocean is huge. In any given square volume of this ocean, it's relatively low. But since the ocean makes up the vast majority of our planet, when you add all that together, it equals, and in some estimates might even go over our areas of the terrestrial places, simply because of the size of the ocean and the numbers of primary producers found in the ocean. That's all I have for this podcast. Come back and we'll look at Objective 3.